Welcome to Freethought Matters. I'm Laurie, Gaylor.
And I'm Dan Barker. We're co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which brings you this weekly show for the rest of us. We'll be back in a moment to introduce today's guest, Debbie Allen, Executive Director of the Secular Coalition for America.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces Freethought Matters, is the nation's largest association of free thinkers. That's atheists, agnostics, and other non-believers. We invite you to join us in our vital work to keep our secular government free from religious influence. Become a member at ffrf.org or ask for a complimentary copy of our newspaper, Freethought Today. Freedom depends on freethinkers. Watch prior episodes of Freethought Matters on FFRF's YouTube channel.
I'm Dan Barker.
I'm Laurie, Gaylor.
There's an abundance of religious lobbies out there, but did you know there's a lobbying group just for freethinkers? Atheists, humanists, and other non-believers. It's called the Secular Coalition for America. The Secular Coalition has offices in Washington, D.C., and represents not only the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but 19 other national secular organizations, plus hundreds of smaller regional groups.
Its executive director is Debbie Allen. Before becoming a secular activist, Debbie Allen was a psychotherapist in private practice and a research associate in neuropsychology at UCSD Medical Center. Thank you so much, Debbie Allen, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So first, why do we need a secular lobbying group?
Because we need to specifically represent non-theists at the nation's capital. There's plenty of people that represent a little bit of everyone, but no one specifically is going to the halls of Congress and saying, I represent atheist Americans, humanist Americans, free-thinking Americans.
Wow.
So how many of us are there, Debbie?
Hundreds of thousands, too many to count. The Pew study that came out in 2019 suggests there's 4% that identify as atheists, about 4% that identify as humanists, but in total, about 26% identify as the nones, non-religiously affiliated.
Nuns as in N-O-N-E, not N-U-N, nuns religiously.
Tell us who makes up the Secular Coalition for America.
We have 20 member organization. When we started in 2002, there were 4, and from that original 4, the Secular Student Alliance is still involved. It's the only original group. Do you mind if I go ahead and read them all? Because I'm sure they would all. Okay. American Atheists, American Ethical Union, American Humanist Association, Atheist Alliance of America, Black Nonbelievers, Camp Quest, Center for Inquiry, Cultural and Secular Jewish Organization, Ex-Muslims of North America, Foundation Beyond Belief, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Freethought Society, Hispanic American Freethinkers, Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, Recovering from Religion, Secular Student Alliance, Secular Woman, Society for Humanistic Judaism, The Clergy Project, and Unitarian Universalist Humanists.
Wow, what a great...
That's quite a lot of groups. When my mother and I were the original founders of the Freedom from Religion Foundation back in 1976, there were only very few games in town. So there's a burgeoning movement.
Well, and our group only had about 1,000 members back then, and now it's, what, 36,000?
Right. So great growth in the non-believers, and yet we don't seem to be too powerful in terms of getting members of Congress to do what we want.
Mm-hmm. One of the best things about organizing in a coalition, and this is obviously a voluntary coalition, so all of these groups have decided that they want to work with one another. The benefit to us as a lobbying organization going to the Hill is that we're taking with us the power of the coalition, the numbers involved in the coalition, and also the various groups in the coalition. It makes a big difference to a Congress member to see that there's actually a military association involved, or a Jewish organization involved, or a Hispanic organization. It lets certain people know that, in fact, those groups exist, and that there are non-theists in foxholes, for example.
So there's two Jewish groups you mentioned. And most people think Jewish are religious, and he says for the non-religious. Didn't you have some association with a Jewish group in your own history?
I did. I was thinking about this the other day. I was dating a boy, and he was a Christian, and I thought if I was going to get seriously involved with him, I better understand the relationship he had with Christianity. And he was a little bit of the evangelical sort. And I, by this time in my life, was a full-blown committed atheist. When I went to services with him, I realized I love the community. I love the singing. I love the sermon. I loved the people that I met. But as soon as they started asking me to come to Jesus, I was out the door. So that's when I started looking for some kind of organization, community group, where I could go to be with people interested in social justice that were not worshiping Jesus. I mean, it was as simple as that. It was very important to me that I didn't have a God belief, and that I wanted to respect that. And I discovered a Reformed congregation who was perfectly willing to have me join them as an atheist. I studied for a year and realized that this congregation was more concerned with what you do, not what you believe. And that's when I converted to Judaism as an atheist.
Wow. But we should point out that the two humanist Jewish groups that are part of the secular coalition are made up of non-believers who identify culturally as Jewish. So,
in fact, when Sherwin Wine, he graduated from traditional rabbinic training, would probably have become a Reform rabbi, but he was a humanist, he was an atheist, and he started humanistic Judaism.
Well, he invited me to his, what do you call it, temple, I guess, in Michigan to give a talk. He was very open about humanists and free thinkers and all of it. I remember that.
Yeah, he revolutionized the movement. There are various sects within Judaism, from very orthodox fundamentalists to very liberal and non-believing. And even in the Reformed congregation, I was very active, ended up, being on the board of directors and leading interfaith group, education groups, et cetera. And I came to realize that about 68%, this is the studies from the Union of Reformed Judaism, 68% were agnostic or atheist.
But your psychotherapy background actually did lead you to being more interested in atheism, didn't it?
It did. I didn't realize some of the practical ramifications of being a non-believer and how it could impact mental health care. So, for example, I was very much, politically an atheist and very interested in separation of church and state issues. But as a therapist specializing in chemical dependency, I realized that many of my patients and the people I worked with only had religious-oriented recovery programs, such as Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. People that are familiar with those programs, though there's a very religious underpinning to the 12 steps, for example, and how you are to work the program. And there's an insistence that you must believe in something, which always made me laugh a little bit, because you can make something up, but that you must believe in something and have some supernatural power to get sober. And that's not true.
So that led you to work with groups like the secular recovery groups.
Mm-hmm. Rational recovery and smart recovery. And it ended up leading me to be introduced to a lot of secular individuals in my community, because they desperately needed support groups that were non-religious, and people started referring their clients to me, actually, to get some help in maybe even helping them accommodate some of the religious language in atheist or Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
So your journey, your journey from psychotherapist to executive director of a secular lobbying group actually makes a lot of sense, given that background. So looking at the SCA website, the Secular Coalition focuses on about 8 key issues, isn't that right? Besides service to the membership, such as FFRF, there's children's rights, there's science, there's education, there's civil rights, the IRS. But I know that we look at particular bills and laws that we want to have enacted. And I know that there's one you're very interested in talking about, which is the Do No Harm Act. And I wonder if you could explain that.
Okay. First, if you don't mind, just about those key issues, we consider those our evergreen issues. These are the issues that atheists like us have to keep fighting year after year after year. They never seem to go away. We will always be defending public education from the desires of people who would like vouchers, et cetera, and who wouldn't want to teach proper science in the classroom. They would avoid evolution, et cetera. So some of these evergreen issues we will always be focused on. And basically, we're always looking to support good legislation when it happens and to defend ourselves against bad legislation when it happens. And a perfect example of something that seemed like good legislation was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, also known as RFRA for short. And that was introduced by Chuck Schumer around 1993 and signed into law by President Clinton at the time. It had a lot of coalition support. And really, the act states, government shall not substantially burden a person's exercise of religion. And it holds the federal government is responsible for accepting additional obligations to protect that religious exercise. So what started as a way of protecting religious freedom, appreciating the dignity of each individual, and supporting freedom of conscience. What a great idea. But what has happened in the years since? It has become a way of allowing people to claim religious freedom when they want to deny the rights of others on religious grounds. So RFRA now is being used to discriminate against traditionally protected classes.
So I don't want to bake a cake for a gay couple, for example, on religious grounds.
Don't want to bake a cake. If you're Hobby Lobby and you hold sincere religious ideals around reproductive rights and contraception, then you can deny all of your employees the right to contraception. It's an overreach of the original intention of the law. I think originally there were issues like Native Americans wishing to celebrate traditional rituals and use peyote, but there were federal laws against the use of peyote. But in this circumstance, RFRA might allow them to engage in traditional religious rituals important to their culture, and the federal government would stand back because there was no real need for the federal government to crack down on Native Americans wishing to pursue such traditional practices.
So this new Do No Harm Act is an attempt to correct some of the mistakes in RFRA that you are lobbying Congress about.
And of course, at FFRF, we thought RFRA was a mistake because we think people, regardless of what your religion or non-religion is, should all have to follow the same rules, the same laws. You shouldn't be above the law because you're religious. So we're very much in favor of the Do No Harm Act. And when we come back, Debbie, we're going to take a break. We want to talk to you about something I know is very dear to your heart, which is opposing religious exemptions for vaccine mandates. And we'll be right back with Freethought Matters.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist.
When I first recorded that commercial back in 2014, being openly atheist in America was still fairly uncommon. Today, the fastest growing religious group in the country is the non-religious, especially among the young. That progress is heartening, but the religious pushback is fierce and the forces of Christian nationalism are well organized. Our progress won't continue unless we work together so that reason and our secular constitution will prevail. That's why I'm asking you to join the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics working to keep state and church separate, just like our founders intended. Please join the Freedom from Religion Foundation today. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
My name is Gabrielle Hinahara, and I'm an atheist because I believe in the power of doing good for the sake of doing good, and not because some divine entity tells you what is good and what's not, and not because you think it will get you into some sort of heavenly afterlife. I believe in human morality, which is why I think that most cultures across the world have come to the kind of same basic principles and values, such as the Golden Rule, which isn't based in religion, but is based in human interactions and mutual respect. And I think a lot of people turn to religion because it makes the choice of morality really easy, black and white, right and wrong, and you don't have to decide which is which. And in my experience as being an atheist through my life, I've found that moral choices are something that I think about a lot more than a lot of other people because nobody's telling me the answer. And since I don't believe in an afterlife, pretty much my whole meaning in life is based on my interactions with other people and that I can leave this world a better place by my actions.
And welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Debbie Allen, the Executive Director of the Secular Coalition for America. So Debbie, just to be clear, tell our viewers that you are actually lobbying in Congress. You're going into the offices of members of Congress at the national level as well as in state houses, right?
Yes. I mean, technically, most things are virtual these days since COVID happened. A lot of the House and Senate offices are typically closed, although you can arrange occasionally a meeting in person. But yes, every day we're concerned about lobbying. And again, we're lobbying to support good legislation and to fight off bad legislation so that what we were talking about with the Do No Harm Act, we're looking at gaining new sponsors for that act. It was only recently introduced into the Senate by Cory Booker, so we're trying to get more supporters from within the Senate.
And some of our viewers might want to be involved. What is Lobby Day?
Lobby Day is an annual day when we bring in all the people from all our coalition partners and anybody else that would like to participate. We teach people how to lobby. We usually choose one issue to lobby on, such as the Do No Harm Act, or 2 years ago it was secular recovery, actually. And we lobby on that issue. So we'll train people what to say and how to say it and how to make their case. I don't want to say it's simple or too easy, but I do think that people can be trained in several hours to make a real impact on the Hill and then to go home with those skills to have those meetings at home in their own districts with their representatives.
And of course, representatives or senators are beholden to their constituents. They want to hear from constituents. So individual constituents have more power than they think they do, don't you think?
Yeah.
They do. And what else is important for the Secular Coalition for America is that we survey our donors and supporters. We don't have actual members like you have, but anybody, we're representing everybody involved in all the coalitions when we go to the Hill. And I keep track of how many atheists and agnostics and humanists are in their districts. And most representatives have very little idea about the voting bloc that we represent. And of course, it's very important to us as a coalition that we support secular values voters so that we can make a difference by being a substantial voting bloc.
I know that you care a great deal about a topic that is big deal to me too, which is opposition to this idea of religious exemptions for inoculation policy,
yes,
programs to keep all of us safe. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I am very supportive of scientific literacy, and it's been very confusing to me the last couple of years how people have been able to avoid the science behind COVID-19 and the vaccination. And it's become very disturbing to me that people are starting to use RFRA, the religious freedom, to say, I do not want to have a vaccination. It's against my religious freedom. I personally don't see the connection. Recently, I was listening to a podcast about the COVID virus, and a state representative from New Hampshire actually said, as a nurse and as a state representative, that if she got COVID, it was the will of God, and she would accept it. And this is abhorrent to me, because this is a person that is, in effect, in a position of power and influence over her constituency, and she's also a healthcare provider. This is the kind of thing that I do not want a sense of religious freedom to have any influence over, whether or not we take vaccinations.
So could I say I have a religious objection to stop signs, and if I get in an accident, that's God's will for my life, I suppose? Would she say the same thing?
You're seeing that same kind of logic. And yes, you could say that. In fact, there was someone who reacted recently, and it was in social media, so I really don't know her name, but she was a mother who said, may I have an ethical objection to what you're doing? Would that satisfy? Could I avoid your laws or your rules because I have a moral or ethical objection to them? And she makes a good case for it. If we allow everybody to avoid following the law that is there to protect everyone, we're going down a wrong path.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is the direction that it's more frequent that, like at school vaccination programs, they don't just announce, if you have a religious objection, your kids don't have to be vaccinated. They wait for the person to come in and complain. And of course, you know, we have seen exemptions for vaccinations at the public school level, but that's because we've got herd immunity for measles and herd immunity for chickenpox, and we don't have that luxury with the COVID. And so it's going to be something that affects all of us when we see even a good governor like Newsom be the first governor to mandate that there has to be mandatory inoculation of students for COVID. He immediately said, or unless you have a personal belief, against it. And so you can see the harm of this religious backlash.
Newsom in California.
Yes, Newsom in California, making politicians afraid to do the right thing by science.
Yeah.
Right. I understand that people have individual concerns about getting a vaccination, but then they'll have to suffer the consequences of making a choice that they're making to protect themselves over the rest of us. I happen to come from San Diego County, where 32 children died of measles because one child who had failed to have their vaccination went into a pediatrician's office and started infecting a couple children there, and it spread very rapidly. To think that in this day and age, 32 children would die of measles, it's unheard of. But this is exactly what happens when you have a resistance to vaccination and when you want to deny the science. And this was just personal. This was mostly upper income people in the county who just wanted to be safe in case the vaccination could cause some ill effect in their child.
So the Secular Coalition is coming up on its 20th anniversary, isn't it? Next year. It was 2002. Yeah. 20th anniversary, 20 groups. So are you going to have a celebration, or what are we going to do?
Well, I think that it's like my birthday. It needs to last a whole month now so I can get everything in that I want to do. And I think the 20th anniversary of any organization should last the whole year. And, you know, I hadn't really thought about it until you just said something. 20 groups, 20 years. I think it makes a big difference. And yes, we will be planning special events. But also what we do is we really work to support the coalition partners. There's many ways that we do this throughout the year. And so I will be excited to participate in what you're doing in the coming year and what all of our partners are doing.
Debbie, I know that you are a big proponent of how an individual can make a difference, and you have some advice for listeners of ours who are secular, who want to make their views known to their public officials and so on. And can you give us that advice?
I'm thinking that all people have the ability to be an influencer in their own lives. So I have a few asks of everybody. One is that they share the social media and newsletters of our organization and other organizations. It doesn't take much to retweet a tweet, but our influence grows exponentially when we do that. The Secular Coalition is on Twitter, Facebook. We have a newsletter, and I hope you'll come to the website and sign up for those. Also, connect with your legislators. You can do that through action alerts, which you can sign up with Secular Coalition and other organizations in the coalition. And also consider meeting locally in your own district with your representatives. We can help you do that. We can help you set up meetings, and we can provide you with all of the materials you need to go into an office. And really, they don't want a lot of lectures. Your job would be to educate them on a few issues. Everything would be one piece of paper, including how many atheists, agnostics, and humanist freethinkers are in their district. Also, we must vote. You have to vote, and you need to get everybody you know registered and to the polls. This is so important. We cannot be a significant voting bloc if we don't exercise our right to vote. One thing the coalition does every year is organizes Secular America Votes. We'll be doing that again in the coming year. And then finally, please support the work that every organization in the coalition is doing. When we go to Capitol Hill, we're representing you. Financially, you can help us do that. In terms of your time, again, you can do those action alerts where you can reach out to your senators and your Congress members.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Debbie Allen is the Executive Director of the Secular Coalition for America. Thank you for being with us today, Debbie.
It was a pleasure. You guys, I think you know what you mean to me. You were one of the first organizations that sort of took me in as a member and allowed me to contribute to the community work that you're doing. So
well, you mean a lot to us too, Debbie, and thank you so much. And thank you for watching Freethought Matters.
Because free thought matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.